morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I am Dr. Patience Jackson Rose, and this is Co-working Live with Red Worldwide. I am so excited that you have joined with us today, and I thank you for being here, and I thank those who are in our in-studio experience, and we call that our Zoom studio. We are so excited that we have the opportunity to do this every weekday. And even though we're doing it at different times, because we want to make sure that we're able to capture audiences that maybe can't make it in the morning, but they can make it in the afternoon, the live audiences, that is, that want to come into the Zoom studio, we have that as an opportunity because sometimes people ask questions, and those questions are gonna kind of guide us sometimes to a place that we have a new topic, okay? Something that we weren't necessarily expecting. But last week on Wellness Wednesday, yes, it's Wellness Wednesday, celebrate yourself for being well, for doing business well. We really are wanting to make sure that as business owners, we are concentrating on self-care and paying attention to the things that we need to, because if we are not well, we cannot have a business that is going to thrive. At least we won't be at the helm of it. And so we want to make sure that everything that we can do, we're doing, to be able to do business from a well place in our lives. And so we started talking about the ability for us to conquer the fear of failure, and what failure and the fear of failure can sometimes cause. We talked about the feelings of dread and depression and things that happen to people because something may not be going right in their business, and they are not able to manage that process of understanding fear, understanding failure, and not having the fight or flight um, you know, uh, situation, be so prevalent in their life that the fear just takes over, and it goes rogue, and they begin to have lots of different types of health issues. And so with that, we decided to do a part two and talk about the upside of failure, because there is an upside. And if you're able to reframe it, Kevin, I can, hear you thinking over there, if you can reframe it, if you can see things from a different perspective, it can sometimes help you avoid, costly and devastating mistakes or missteps, or even, choices to do something different than what your what you should be doing in your business. And so, Jerron, if you'll bring up our slides, please. I want to just start this off because I need to, I have a beautiful uh, little picture here, and we see this road, and it appears as though the road is going to lead the person right off the edge into the water, and so they don't necessarily know for sure, and they're walking and traversing this road, but the bottom line is they're not sure what's going to happen at the end of it. And that's how we have to, kind of see some of the situations in our life. We start off, we don't know where we're going to end up. We are just moving in a certain direction, and we keep moving forward, even though obstacles might appear, but sometimes obstacles don't appear. And then we find out there's an obstacle, or something breaks down, or we feel like we're going to fall off the edge, and we find out there's a boat at the end of it, at that ramp. And so we just got to understand that there are things that we cannot predict. And because we can't predict them, and because we don't know whether it's going to be something that has a powerful outcome, or something that the outcome is not what we expected, we have to continue to do what we do with a different kind of perspective and outlook, and so failure is a natural part of life, and it can be powerful in the experience of what we learn from it. But how can we shift our perspective and embrace the products of failure? Because the products of failure create things, they allow for things to happen. And if we are able to take those products and really use them to our advantage. Sometimes what is created out of that is, game changing. It makes some of those turning points have made companies become billion-dollar, what we call unicorns. Okay. So, we don't want to look at failure, and say all the time that it's a negative thing, because there are some things we just really needed to see what worked. And the only way we would have been able to see what worked is by finding out what didn't work. So let's look at our next slide. And I just want to kind of, make our way through this and help you to see things maybe a little differently than what you've seen them before. So failure as a stepping stone has some value, okay? Because if you can see these steps here and you can look at step one, the first step, okay, we see maybe the steps are breaking apart a little bit, but we can kind of make our way up. And so we call it the first attempt, the initial effort. And it's often imperfect, but it gives us valuable insights. Or as Kevin said, look at failure with the F, okay, and can craft that F for feedback. And I talk a lot about, how unless we know, what that first thing produced, then we won't know what to do for the second iteration. So you always want to be able to understand that your first attempt, your initial effort may not yield you the perfect results. It may not yield you even the expected result, okay, which might have been imperfect, but it might not. It just might not turn out that way. And so step two has to be analysis and reflection. You got to look at what worked, what didn't, and analyze the mistakes to find out, why they happened. Okay. Because if you don't know why things happen, sometimes you will make the same mistake again, not necessarily intending to do so, but it could turn out that way. And then when you get that feedback, you got to be able to apply what you learned and adjust your approach for, future success. So that refinement and improvement process, which is the next step, that step three, helps you to be able to take what you learned and make it useful, in a way that will allow you to, for your next step, to have, a more desired result. So next slide, please. So what are some of the lessons that we could learn from a failed attempt? Next slide. Well, we can identify some weaknesses because failures expose areas where improvements are needed. And, it's like peeling back a Band-Aid, where you might have something going on underneath, and when you have the ability to expose what's happening there, you might be able to see, oh, you know what, I need to put some ointment, or no, it just needs air so that it can heal better. Having the ability to identify what's happening, really gives you a better footing to know what to do next. Okay. So it exposes areas where the improvements are needed, and it reveals vulnerabilities and areas for growth. Sometimes you didn't even realize that there was a more going on underneath there. You thought, hey, everything was cool, it was going well. And then when you peeled back that Band-Aid and you saw, ooh, okay, something else needs to happen in here. Because it's not able to heal properly on its own, so it needs a little assistance. Okay. But you have to be able to also, we've talked about resilience before in a few of these things, but not in this light. And so when we're looking at the fact that we might have a vulnerability, we have to be able to understand, okay, that vulnerability might just give us enough of what we need so that we can create the better mousetrap, or the better product, or the better process, and in that we have to develop resilience, because the challenge itself, is what gives us these muscles, the stronger or the strength that we need, the stronger attitudes, the stronger, mentality. It makes us better equipped to handle, a future setback or a future failure. Sometimes it may take a couple of times, or a couple of 3 times, before we actually get to the desired result. And so you have to have the kind of problem solving skills that help you to think critically and creatively, and have the ability to iterate or innovate, and create an arsenal or a tool bag that you can reach in every time something is going differently than what you expected. Next slide, please. And let me say this while we're going to the next slide. If you are in a position where you're not really seeing things, from the right perspective, you'll become very disheartened when things don't necessarily go as you intended. And so instead of failure being a part of the process, which we talked about last week, that failure needs to be a part of the process, that you need to understand that some of the things that you think really is a failure is not necessarily a failure. It's just the road to getting to what worked. Okay. And I want you to be able to see some things, and not become so emotionally involved in the process, because a lot of the depression, or the, the unmet expectations, unfulfilled dreams, and all of those things that I could name at this point, a lot of times those things are not what we think they are. We give them that place. We ascribe to them these positions that really they're not supposed to have in our life. If they're a part of the process, they're just that, a part of the process, so that we can understand, okay, we worked this way, and this particular thing is not the way that's going to give us this desired result. So we have to work the process this way, So embracing failure to fuel innovation is something that I didn't necessarily create it, but it's something that I've adapted. Okay. How about that? And so it entails 3 things: risk taking and experimentation. And this involves really, attempting something with the thought process of, okay, this may fail. Okay, this may not be the road to that we're trying to go to, that's going to get us to this particular destination. We may have to turn off and go a different way, because there may be something that is, impeding the progress. And so the innovation itself, really thrives on the experimentation, being able to experiment and see, how this is going to work, not if it works, but how it's going to work. And failure may be a necessary part of that piece, because, if we don't know that it didn't work this way, then we won't know how it works. So again, having the concept of being a risk taker and experimenting with something long enough, playing with it long enough to find out, okay, I can't make it go in this particular sense, but if I add these things to it, then it becomes everything I needed it to be. I've created so many new recipes because something that I was working on didn't quite work the way that I intended. And I didn't see it as an ultimate failure. I saw it as a way to get to, the taste I was looking for, the texture I was looking for, and the desired result, because people, at the end of this, they were going to eat that and they were going to enjoy it. Okay. And so I just needed to have all of the pieces in there, the right texture, the right, sweetness, saltiness. I mean, I needed all of the pieces to do what they needed to do so that when they're sitting there eating it, they're like, mm. I used to talk about my grandson. When he would eat, he'd make all these wonderful little sounds. You know, he would just be really enjoying the his food, and he would just, oh, oh, Grammy, this is so good. You know, and that was so encouraging to me, you know. And so when we have the ability to be thinking about the end result and what people are going to experience, you know, when they have the opportunity to see what you've done for the first time, or to, you know, use what you created, you know, for the first time, or for that matter, use it over and over and over again and have it give them the same result every time. Those things are the products of the innovation that you created. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the product of failure in a minute. But having the adaptability and the flexibility, those two pieces are so important, because when we're able to embrace failure, and it helps us to we use it to adapt to changing circumstances, you know, then we can, you know, embrace the new idea. What we now know, okay, you know what, we're done with that because it didn't work. Now we're going to go over here and use this because it has more promise. And it gives us the ability to, you know, really see, you know, something from a different end. Okay. And so we see breakthroughs and discoveries, okay, because of knowing what works. And sometimes knowing what didn't work shows us what worked. Okay. So these breakthroughs and discoveries, the great inventions, some of the greatest inventions that we have in our, you know, modern world have come from, you know, failures. I mean, from looking at something uh, that was attempted a certain way, and we ended up with it, you know, a different way. I mean, we have cornflakes now because of failure. We have Post-it notes because of failure. So understand that some of the things that we use every day, things that we wouldn't live without right now, are because of something that did not work, or at least didn't work the way that it was designed, okay, initially. Next slide, please. So how do we use failure as a catalyst for personal growth? Well, again, and I've taught this probably, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 times in a different way, but today it's coming out this way because I want you to see the product, the end result. You know, so the first thing I need you to understand is that failure as a catalyst for personal growth, as a, you know, a key thing that we put in our lives, so that, you know, a part of the discovery process, a part of our, you know, self-awareness journey, you know, provides us these valuable insights, valuable opportunities for self-reflection. We talked about this last week. And so I want to just remember, you know, and personally, I have used self-awareness tools for a long time. Okay. Personality inventories and all types of um, you know, biofeedback, so that I could become more aware of what was going on, you know, and I even have just used some self-reflection so that I could understand my strengths and my weaknesses. I could understand my limitations as a human, and I could know exactly how I needed to, you know, move about because of my, you know, humanness. Okay. How I could depend on, you know, my creator to assist me in areas that I just did not have, you know, what I felt like I needed to have to be able to move forward, you know. And then, you know, utilizing emotional intelligence. We've been doing a lot in the area of emotional intelligence. I finished my newest book, Power Stations, Power Field Conversations that vitalize, validate, and value. Is for women. It's Power Stations 4.0. And in that book, I do a lot of real talk, okay, if I can say it this way, about using emotional intelligence, because we need to be able to understand how do we develop out that skill, and how do we use it for personal growth? If we can manage what we have as perceived failures and understand that these perceived setbacks, and I am saying perceived because a lot of them are perception, it's not the way it really is, then this crucial skill can help us, in our, stepping, from one level to another level, personally and professionally. It helps us to, move out of where we are and into that, into our next with grace. And so having a different perspective with regards to failure is going to give you the ability to have this tool that when a challenge comes, you can see it as temporary and it does not wreck your whole year. Or I've seen people that have a setback and it seems like they are stuck in this place for 5 years because of the fact that something demonstrated a different set of um, deliverables. I love to use that word, in their life. And based on that, it seemed as though everything fell apart. And instead of them using that as a stepping stone, or for that matter, I would say, when life gives you a puddle jump, okay, instead of seeing it from those perspectives, we just are sitting there looking at what happened and stumbling over that thing that happened for years. And so I am saying that, what if you took a different approach? What if you looked at the product of the failure and turned that thing into something that could not just change your life, but change the world, okay? Or at least the world around you, the world that your family, your workplace, your company. Okay, so let's take a look at how we can transform failure into opportunity. All right, let's look at the next slide. So we've talked about reframing before. So instead of viewing failure as a defeat, see it as a chance to learn and grow. See it as an opportunity. See it for what it is. It's not designed. Nobody designed failures to stop you. Okay. And I want you to understand there's not some force that's trying to make sure that you never get to where you're going. True enough, we do have an enemy, and there is an enemy of our souls, and I do believe that. However, I think that a lot of people are looking at their life as, them being, this figure that everything is out to get. And I don't believe that that's how life is. I don't believe that life is out to try to make you out to be someone that you're not, or to create for you missed opportunities. And, I believe that some of these things that you have, given a lot more credence to, have a lot more power than what they should. Okay, just saying. And then we got to be able to seek some new perspectives, talk to other people, because in your head, in your room, in your house, when you live alone, especially, you see it one way. And having these new perspectives or other perspectives sometimes can give you a view that you just didn't consider. So you got to be able to talk to some mentors, or talk to advisors, coaches, people that, really can give you valuable feedback, and explore some alternative approaches to what it is that you're trying to do. And sometimes it's just tweaking one thing. I mean, just literally one thing. And when you tweak that one thing, it changes everything. So by talking to others and really getting the thoughts out there, putting them out on paper, drawing if you need to, the what happened, and then drawing what it is that maybe, needs to look different. sometimes you get a different perspective that you just haven't considered, and that thing changes. Like I said, everything. You got to take action. Turn your insights from failure into concrete steps to improve and achieve future success. If you don't do something with what occurred, okay, with the product of the failure, then it just remains as failure and not useful for anything. So let's look at some unexpected rewards. And Javon, if you can go to our next slide, this one is really, kind of cute, because let me just tell you, there have been times, and we plant. We've had tower gardens where we planted things in the house. I've had gardens, where we have planted things outside of the house. And at one point in time, when my kids were very, very young, we grew a lot of the food that we ate. And I never forget, I had some seeds and they weren't properly labeled, and I wasn't even sure what was going to come, onto the garden, on the tower garden, because of the fact that I didn't know which seeds were there. Another time I had, put the seeds in a paper towel and just moistened it just a little bit, because it had to grow a certain height before I could put it in the pod to put it on the tower. And if you guys, some of you who know about hydroponics, you know that food can be grown vertically. And so we were growing food inside the house vertically at, both the house in Texas and the house here in California. And as we were doing this, it was a learning experience. Let me tell you, some of things that we did on that tower, for me, I felt like it was an epic fail. It turned out that some of those things that I thought were an epic fail actually were the best possible things that could happen. We started out trying to grow everything outside on the tower, on the back porch. Well, because of the kind of insects that are prevalent in that part of Texas, that tower garden was a magnet to any kind of thing, any kind of bug that wanted to eat up our produce. And so we had to try to, dissuade the bugs from, hanging out there. And I thought I could do that through essential oils. And in doing that, I killed some of the plants. It was hilarious. So this was, again, a product of the failure, though, was that we realized we didn't have to grow the food outside because it was on the tower. And so we could actually grow it inside the house. So after we cleaned the tower really well, so that we made sure we didn't bring any bugs in the house, and cleaned the plants, we brought the tower inside the house, and we had the best harvest. We were supposed to only, I think they said that the lettuces would bear, we'd be able to get about 6 to 7, yields from that one, set of seed that we had planted. And I want to tell you that we had 7 different species of lettuce for about 6 months, okay, which was crazy. Every time we would, tear lettuce off, it would just grow right back. And it was like, oh, such an amazing thing. So what I thought I thought it was an epic failure that we bought these towers, put on the back porch and grow this food, and it didn't work. Well, what worked, though, is that we realized we could control the temperature inside the house. We could control what bugs were, going to have access to, the plants. If they were inside the house, we could really better control our water, a reservoir inside the house. It was just so many things. We could control the lighting because we had grow lights, and we can control the grow lighting better inside the house. It just was a much better environment for the plants. And because outside the temperature changed a lot in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and we just had so many variables, and we could control all of those variables inside the house. So what looked to be an epic fail was actually the best blessing for us to get the yield that we were looking for. So when we're looking at the unexpected rewards of failure, we got to be thinking about increased empathy. A lot of what we experienced gave us a different level of compassion, for our little plants. Okay. We were able to see, okay, they were going to be much better cared for inside the house and respected and regarded. And, because we were conscious of, okay, I know we're cold, but we got to keep the temperature right about this amount of, right here, because if we go too high or too low, the plants are going to be affected. And so the empathy for our little plants, would change. And so when you're looking at the reward of failure, sometimes failure can foster empathy and understanding for the other people who you are working with, and for that matter, even for your customers and clients, but also for people who might be struggling. When you have gone through something and you see someone else coming through something like that, you have a different feeling. You are seeing things, saying, you know what, I need to be conscious of my actions and what I can do to make this easier so that people can, live vicariously through what I already went through. They don't have to go through that again. If I can just make it, easier for people to see the model, or for them to see my results, or for them, or for being vulnerable enough to share with them my experience, and then you have a greater appreciation for success. It makes you more grateful. I'm just being honest. When you have gone through something, it makes you more grateful. Failures make us appreciate the value of success even more. And then it gives you the ability to become more innovative, more creative. When you have the pressure to overcome what you've just lived through, sometimes it leads you to a more innovative and creative solution that you might would have had before, because you wanted that bad. Okay, just saying. And then there's some unanticipated, or what we would call, unaccounted for opportunities that show up, because the unexpected opportunities and paths, you may not have even considered those before. When failure happens, it becomes a situation where you start thinking about, what, let me look at this and see, whether I should use this particular thing this way or not. So our conclusion today, Javon, if you can bring up our next slide, I'd appreciate it. To be able to celebrate the products of failure, you got to make sure that you are understanding that failure is not the end. It's the destiny of your failure that you can absolutely control. You can't control failure itself. You really can't. But you can control the destiny of the failure, what you do with it. What are the products that you were able to get out of the failure? How can you embrace that process so that you have this ability to unlock um, the the brilliance, that comes from being able to reconsider, taking another pass at something and seeing another way of bringing it to market, or bringing it forward, to use it as a service. The products of failure are there to build, as a building block, a richer, more resilient, and more successful life. And you have got to be able to see it that way. Well, this has been Dr. Patience Jackson Rose, and you're here with Co-working Live with Red Worldwide. And we want you to understand the products of failure and the upside, and be able to use it. And when we have that as a, another tool in our toolbox as an entrepreneur, it really does help us to do business well. We will see you again next time.